All right, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Nature Conservancy and our partners at Civic Exchange, I'm very thrilled to welcome you to the launch of our groundbreaking report, Nature-Based Solutions in the Northern Metropolis, a model for 21st century cities in addressing global climate challenges. My name is Scott, and as the Nature-Based Solution Project Manager at TNC, it's my privilege to host you today. This event is a pivotal moment to explore how nature-based solutions, or NBS, can transform Hong Kong Northern Metropolis into a global model for urban resilience, sustainability, and climate adaptations. So today we will share key insights from our report, spark meaningful dialogues, and inspire collaborative actions to mainstream NBS in urban planning, policy, and financing. So let's dive in. Here's what to expect for this event. We will start with opening remarks, followed by a group photo to mark these occasions. Next, we will present the report's key findings, move into a dynamic panel discussions, and conclude with an interactive Q&A sessions. So please stay engaged, jot down your questions, and share your ideas. We are very excited to hear from you. To set the stage, I'm very delighted to introduce Ms. Lulu Zhou, Director of Strategic Partnerships for Climate Resilience, the Nature Conservancy Asia Pacific region. Lulu's leadership has been instrumental in advancing nature-based solutions across the region, and she will be sharing her vision for this transformative work. Lulu, the floor is yours.
I'll be short because I know everybody's looking forward to our panel discussion and the reflections of the report. But good afternoon, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and respected members of the press. It is my great pleasure to welcome you as we release our latest report on nature-based solutions for Hong Kong's Northern Metropolis. This is a report shaped by collective expertise, rigorous analysis, and a shared vision for a more resilient future. So please, welcome. Take your seat. All right, the more the merrier. This publication is a combination of months of diligent work, in-depth research, cross-sector collaboration, and insightful debate at times. It truly amplifies the power of partnership in advancing urban sustainability. I want to begin by expressing my deepest appreciation to all the report's authors and the contributors. Believe me, it's a long list if you have a copy in hand. But especially to my colleagues from Civic Exchange and the Nature Conservancy. Since January, our teams have devoted themselves to distilling insights from the NBS conference, engaging a wide range of experts and stakeholders, and elevating the core recommendations for policymakers. This process-driven work has resulted in a roadmap that's both visionary and actionable. We are also deeply grateful for the input from our government partners, private sector leaders, and community stakeholders. Their perspectives have ensured this report is firmly rooted in Hong Kong's unique ecological and socio-economic context. This report could not be more timely as Hong Kong revisits our biodiversity strategy and action plan and the climate action plan. Our findings offer practical pathways to better integrate NBS into these critical policies. From wetland corridors that reduce flood risks to urban greening that cools our neighborhoods, NBS offers a triple win: strengthening climate resilience, restoring biodiversity, and enhancing community well-being. The Northern Metropolis represents a generational opportunity to put nature at the heart of urban development. We are encouraged that the government realizes this potential with CEDD leading the way on developing NBS guidelines. I think this is a foundational step towards standardizing design principles and implementation for future projects. Our recommendations in the report, as you may find, are comprehensive, spanning blended finance mechanisms and cross-border collaboration with Shenzhen. These strategies are designed to help Hong Kong become a model of nature-positive urban development for Asia and beyond. NBS is not a niche or abstract concept to us anymore. They're essential. Faced with extreme heat, rising sea levels, and other climate threats, the cost of inaction will only grow. This report lays out scalable, cost-effective, and inclusive solutions that can shape a more resilient city for everyone. Here is our proposed solution to seize the momentum. To the Hong Kong government, we are ready to support you to bringing these recommendations to life. To our partners, let's continue to drive innovations together. And to the press, we invite you to amplify the message. Nature is our greatest ally in building a livable and sustainable future for all. Thank you for your attention. I'm now pleased to invite Ms. Kitty Tan, the lead author for this report from Civic Exchange, to share further reflections. Thank you.
We need to do the group photo first. Photo first. MC.
Thank you, Lulu, for the inspiring start. So let's capture this moment first. Very exciting. So I invite all our speakers, panelists, and to bring your report to the front, to join us at the front for a quick group photo to commemorate today's launch.
No, we take one like this first. Yeah.
Thanks very much. And now let's dive into the heart of today's event, the report itself. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Kitty Tam, Program Lead at Civic Exchange. Kitty will guide us through the report key findings, highlighting why the Northern Metropolis is such a critical opportunity for NBS, and the practical steps that needed to unlock its potential for climate resilient urban development. Kitty, over to you.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, KK, KS, Christine, and good afternoon, all our guests here today. So I will have next 15 minutes to talk about almost 200 pages of reports. So I will not talk about all the details, but I will talk about the highlights and the key findings that is written. And so I will talk about the background, the risk and opportunity, challenges, and some key recommendations. So as you can see, I guess you all have a hard copy of the report with you. And we have separated the report in two big parts, part 1 and part 2. So part 1, we mainly talk about the societal challenge that NBS can solve. So in this part 1, we talk about what's the global status, and then the local risk. So global status, what is the status of climate change? In 2015, Paris Agreement, 196 countries they signed that they pledge to commit to a well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level, and then 5 try to do 1.5 degree. But what are we now? Where are we now? So according to IPCC, according to all the parties' pledges in their NDCs, National Determined Contribution, currently, if we want to reach the 1.5 degree Celsius goal, it's not enough. We can only do 2.6% of carbon reduction by 2030 from the 2019 levels. But the science said that it has to be a 43% reduction. So you can see the difference, 2.6 and 43%. There's a huge gap. So how can we do it? What to do? And then there's also biodiversity loss globally. So 1 million of species might be extinct. And why this matter to us? So by year 2100, there will be a 3.1 degrees Celsius of temperature increase. And when there's biodiversity loss, there will be more climate risk that we are facing. So IPCC told us that we need to have a rapid, deep, and sustained decarbonization. And then in our conference, we had a guest from IPCC, AR6 Working Group 2 co-chair, Professor Deborah Roberts. She mentioned a radical realism of a 1.5 degrees Celsius overshoot scenario. So what does it mean? It means that we have to think ahead. We cannot lie to ourselves and think that, okay, we can stay within 1.5 degrees. Because no matter what, according to science data, it's going to exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. And then we are actually on track to exceed it by 2029 globally. So we have to think ahead. We have to plan ahead. So what to do? So when you see that right now in Hong Kong, last year it was a 1.3 degrees Celsius above already. We already experienced typhoon, rainstorm, a lot of these extreme events. So we must think in a radical realism way. So we urgently need nature-based and urban integrated solution going forward. So what is nature-based solution? So back in 2023, TNC and Civic Exchange, we had the first forum talking about nature-based solution. Back at that time, nature-based solution, this word is still a buzzword, and not a people know about it. When I chat with a government official, they ask me, what is it? Can you tell me more about it? So we did a forum, and then we did a report. It's called Unlocking the Potential of Nature in Climate Action Planning. So this report, we list out what is NBS, basically. And then we talk about the history. And so after 2 years, I feel that in Hong Kong, we understand more, and then more people, they want to do something about it. So NBS, in case you don't know what's NBS, so NBS are the actions to address societal challenge through the protection, sustainable management, and restoration of ecosystem. So it has to be a functioning ecosystem. So you can't just say some tree or some river. It is an NBS because it has to be dealing with some sort of societal challenge, and it has to be a functioning ecosystem. So it's not just about green space, but climate infrastructure. So an infrastructure to prepare for the future climate change situation. So over there is a photo I generate from AI. It's a vision for Hong Kong based on the conclusion of the report. So you can see we have some housing over there, and then next to some wetland. So I'm not sure whether this is really viable, but I think this is at least my vision for nature-based solution in Hong Kong. So report background. So after the forum in 2023, we decided to do a bigger conference in January this year. We invited international speakers and local experts to share on their thoughts on nature-based solution in Northern Metropolis. So we had another 2 roundtables in March, and some of you, I recognize you were in the roundtable. And then we actually synthesize what was said in those events, and then we wrote in this report. So the report is not something we just write it by ourselves, but it's actually the voice of all of you guys. And then we focus on 3 key themes in this report. So it's urban planning, regional collaboration, and then business and finance. So Northern Metropolis. So we use Northern Metropolis as the key case study in this year's conference and report. So in the future, there will be 1/3 of Hong Kong's population living in the Northern Metropolis, but then it's facing a lot of climate risk, including extreme heat, sea level rise, hill fire, flooding, and landslides. So, and then I actually put the report page of each slide, so you can go back to the page and have a look in details. So we will face all these risks in the future, but there's an opportunity for us, because as we are planning right now, we can start thinking about nature-based solutions to incorporate it from the beginning of the planning. So here is some real opportunities that we conclude from the conference and also roundtable. We mentioned that there's an opportunity of hillside reforestation. For example, in Gai Gong Lang, there's some slopes that we can do some reforestation there. So by doing reforestation, actually it reduces the risk of landslide, and then it also reduces the risk of flooding in the urban area. And then we also mentioned about the smart gateway. So do you guys know what's gateway? So gateway is a stream pond. And then we said that actually if we use some innovative technology, and then we can monitor the water level, then actually the gates of the gateway can close when the water level is very high. And before rainstorm, we can open the gate and let the water go out first. So when the rainstorm comes, the gateway can actually be storm water storage facility. So we can think about this kind of thing, smart gateway. And then in the city area, what can we do? We can think about biodiversity-friendly parks in the urban parks, green routes, vertical greening, and street tree planting. So there's already a lot of things laid out, and then it's just next step. How can we actually do all this? So part 2 of the report is about accelerating scaled NBS implementation. So I would like to highlight the word scaled. So we are not talking about just NBS, but a scale one. Because as you see, 2.6 and 43% is a huge gap. So it means in the future, we will have climate change effects a lot. So we need to think big. So we need scale NBS implementation. So that is a key word. And so first, urban planning. So I remember in the roundtable, actually, we discussed a lot. What is the problem? What is the challenge to implement nature-based solutions in urban planning? So right now in Hong Kong, the problem is we have some fragmented planning situation here. So for example, when a project is planned, and then it will go to the EIA. However, it's just a small area or it's partially. So there's nothing very holistic on that. So we need to think in a holistic way to deal with climate risk, where is good and where is not good to build. And then we also lack of a high-level government commitment. So hopefully, after this report is launched, we will have some more high-level government commitment in the future to say, okay, let's incorporate nature-based solution or incorporate nature in the planning process. Although now we have, but maybe strengthen more. And then I remember there's also a discussion on the sequencing. It's also quite interesting. So it's not that we are not doing it, but we are doing it in a quite a late stage. So actually we need to incorporate this nature thinking at the early stage of the planning. So also institutional fragmentation. So there's different government departments, So in the future, government departments, they need to work close together. They all need to understand what's nature-based solution. So you can have a look at the report page 54 to 55. So the recommendation regarding urban planning is we need to have a better planning approach. So I came up with this word, a multi-level landscape network approach. Because when I just say a landscape approach, maybe different people will understand it differently. But what we mean here, landscape network approach, is we need to think big. We need to look at the whole landscape of Northern Metropolis, or even looking even with the Shenzhen Bay area. We need to look bigger. So we need to plan at a bigger landscape level, not just project by project. And then we need to think whole of government and whole of society approaches. So it's the different government department need to work together. They need to sit together and think how to do it. And then also capacity building. We need to learn about it first before we can actually do it. So I actually think that this report is a capacity building for this community and for myself. I have learned so much writing this report. And then I use the flood management as the case study in this as the multi-level landscape network approach. Because apparently if you do reforestation on the hillside, as I said, then on the downstream side in the river, you can mitigate the flood risk when there's a rainstorm coming. So this is the way of the landscape approach. So you guys can have a look in the report in the corner of the pages. And then cross-border regional collaboration. So we have identified a few priorities, 3 key priorities for cross-border collaboration. So the first one is we need to move from concepts to true implementation. And how to do it is to address the structural barriers. So for example, different legal or different planning standard procedures between the border, cross-border. So we need to address that. And then we actually need to pilot some key projects. So in China's national VSAP, VSAP is the biodiversity planning document. It actually said that in Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau area is a key strategic area. And then we need to develop collaborative mechanism for biodiversity conservation and governance. So actually it has to be done. And then I think in the report we already list out how to do it. So you guys can have a look. So opportunities. I think KK can talk about it later in the panel discussion. He mentioned this term golden in a bay. So we can discuss that later further on what is it about. And so some other opportunities including urban flood resilience and climate adaptation, as we have the Deep Bay area, Shenzhen Bay. We can think about, for example, the gateway. How can gateway help as a storm water storage? And we also can think about how can we connect the ecology between the border. So we need to do more coordination on legal and policy. And then for financing, there's also a huge opportunity to think of regional carbon markets and green investment in the Greater Bay Area. So here is the roadmap for NBS implementation in the Greater Bay Area. So red is the short term, 1 to 3 years, and medium term is the orange, and then long term is green. So I actually put long term in 5 years because I think climate change, we need to do something quite rapid, right? So even long term is 5 years, so we have to do this quite urgently. So we said in the discussion during the conference, we said that there should be a Hong Kong Shenzhen NBS task force to be launched. And then we also need to pilot some ecosystem restoration initiative, potentially on mangrove restoration. And then we also need to rely on Hong Kong's expertise on ecological monitoring and management to see how we can bring all these skills to Shenzhen, and then we can exchange further to improve it. And then we can also develop an NBS financing model in a regional way to think about potential biodiversity credits and carbon markets. Because for biodiversity credits, we actually discussed it in the roundtable, and from our banking partners, they mentioned that biodiversity credit is very difficult because it's unlike carbon credits. Carbon credits you can trade globally, but biodiversity credit is a very area specific. So we need to think how can we work with our neighbor, regional, on this one, if we really want to make it work. And for a long term, we need to think of how to institutionalize the NBS governance framework across the GPA. So I don't have much time left, but actually I think it's 2/3 of the report pages is about financing NBS, because I think this is a very important topic. If we want to make everything that the part 1 and 2 works, we need to have money to do it. So financing is something quite new. I think new to me, but I think it's everybody needs to learn about it. And actually someone mentioned that this should be a separate report. Just publish urban planning and regional collaboration first. But we think that without financing, we can't do the other two. So I think it's very important. So in short, NBS really need investment to scale. However, why it cannot be scaled up is because there's lack of financing. Why we lack of financing is because there's no standard. So there's a lack of standardized financial frameworks and metrics. Because for financing to work, the banks, they need to know whether a project is good or bad and how to measure the KPI. But right now, there's no global standard on how to measure it. So we got stuck. And then we also have a lack of high quality bankable projects. So how can we make money out of doing all these projects? If you can't really make money, then nobody wants to finance it. So that is the problem. And in the roundtable, we conclude that we need to frame NBS as the climate infrastructure, and then use infrastructure finance to fund all these NBS projects. So for example, if the NBS project, it can really provide the flood risk mitigation, then we should consider it as a infrastructure to reduce flood risk. So we need to think about this, like we need to market it as a climate infrastructure. And then we also list out a lot of strategy to attract NBS investment. So you can have a look, there's a lot of pages. So some financing tools we need to think about, for example, green bonds, climate resilient funds, blended finance, and PPPs. So banks, you guys need to think about how to do this, think about how to structure them. So key takeaways is Hong Kong, we can really lead on urban nature-based solution if we can try to integrate early stage planning. And then we need to have institutional backing. We need to have high-level commitments. And then we need to work on cross-border collaboration to make the NBS really large scale. And then we need to enable financing environments. So next step, what to do after this today? It's not just we launch a report and we go back to business as usual. This report suggests us to think about maybe we can start an NBS task force. We can bring different stakeholders together to brainstorm what to do next. And then since BSEC consultation is going on, and actually they have 10 questions at the end of the consultation, and one key question is asking about nature-based solution. So I highly recommend you guys to input your thoughts about NBS in the BSEC consultation. And we really need to think that NBS should be a standard practice. It shouldn't be like a special case, just one project and that's it. And everybody need to think about, you guys, everybody need to think about how you can contribute to it. So this is actually a slide from the 2023 forum. I asked, which future are you guys rooting for? You want the left or the right? So that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Kitty, for the compelling overview. So we now transition to our panel discussions, where we will explore how nature-based solutions can help shape our urban planning, policy, financing, and community engagement in Hong Kong and beyond. We have a slight change to the panel lineup from what was previously shared. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Maureen Thomas is not able to join us today. But in her place, we are very pleased to have Ms. Kitty Tam to step in as moderator for these sessions. Additionally, we are delighted to welcome Ms. Lulu Zhou as an additional panelist. We are especially honored to be joined by 3 experts who were actively involved in our MBS for Climate Conference earlier this year. Their insights and contributions help shape the findings of the report that we are launching today. So let's now welcome our distinguished panelists. Professor Wong Kam Seng, GBS, JP, former Secretary for the Environment from 2012 to 2022. During his tenure, Professor Wong led the development of multiple climate policy blueprints, including Hong Kong's first Climate Action Plan. Professor Wong, please. And next up, we have Professor Christine Law, SBS OBE JP, Chief Development Strategist at the Institute for the Environment, Hong Kong UST, which plays a key role in shaping sustainability strategies for the Northern Metropolis. Professor Law also served as Under Secretary for the Environment. Thank you, Christine. And up next, we have Professor Ling Ka Kan, SBS, former Director of Planning, 2012 to 2016, President of Hong Kong Institute of Planners, and Strategic Planning Advisor for Hong Kong Shenzhen Corporation from 2021 to 2022. Professor Ling was instrumental in formulating the Northern Metropolis development strategies, which integrates housing, innovations, and cross-boundary collaboration. And lastly, we have Ms. Lulu Zhou, Director of Strategic Partnership for Climate Resilience, the Nature Conservancy Asia Pacific region. A 16-year veteran at the Nature Conservancy, Ms. Zhou brings deep expertise in conservation strategies and partnership building across mainland China and Hong Kong. Her most recent work focusing on building a climate resilient Greater Bay Area for the Nature Conservancy Asia Pacific. Now, panelists, please take your seats, and Kitty, the stage is yours.
Okay, so thank you everybody for staying awake after that heavy presentation. And so now we have a lot of amazing guests. I call it a star level, sync up panel here. So maybe I will start off the question by asking you guys, for Northern Metropolis in particular, do you think nature-based solutions provide an exciting opportunity for integrating ecological and urban planning, integrate nature in the urban planning? So maybe you guys can. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kitty, and thank you, KS, for kicking the ball to me to kickstart. Yes, first of all, when we look at this and the abbreviation of nature-based solution, NBS, I would rather take this as system, nature-based system, because what Kitty have been making examples, gateway, planting at the hill, at the foot of the hills, there's individual solutions, but we need to, connect all this in the system. So I would rather take it as nature-based system. And for the Northern Metropolis development, I think that's a new experience for Hong Kong. We used to have large-scale urban development on existing land or on reclaimed land. So while we are sitting here, it is a land formed by reclamation. And for the Northern Metropolis development, perhaps it is the first time for Hong Kong to have large-scale urbanization on floodplains. Of course, you may argue that not really. We have Northern Metropolis area. We have already had the Tin Shui Wai New Town, Yunnan New Town, and Fanling Shan Shui New Town. They are also built on floodplain. But this time, we take the northern part of our new territories not only as individual new towns, but as a holistic metropolis. So in this way, I would say it is really a new experience for Hong Kong that we are going to develop a holistic metropolis on floodplain. With that, a lot we need to we need to learn. Perhaps the most challenging part is how to deal with water flooding. And when we talk about water, on the one hand, it's flooding. On the other hand, it is a very important nature element. Our wetland, even our fish pond, even though it is artificial feature. Previously, most of our fish ponds were paddy fields, and when the farmers found paddy field cannot make a living for them, they transform the land, the paddy field, into fish ponds, and incidentally, this fish pond became a very important element of our whole wetland system for migratory birds and for cooling of our climate, this and that. If we look at the northern metropolis development, perhaps we need to look back a little bit more. It is on the Hong Kong 2030 Plus. That's the latest version of the strategic plan for Hong Kong. One of the strategic plan principle advocated in this strategic plan is to create capacity for sustainable growth of Hong Kong. So when we talk about capacity, when we talk about create capacity, actually it means we create development capacity and at the same time also environmental capacity. So the advocacy in Hong Kong HK 2030 Plus is that we believe we may be able to create development capacity as well as environmental capacity at the same, planning process. And the northern metropolis development strategy inherit these important planning principles, and we really would like to put this into practice in the northern metropolis development. Perhaps I stop here and leave KS and Christine to give your views.
As usual, my previous boss says you go first. And for me, I think the northern metropolis, and actually the discussion that the community is having at this time, has been somewhat of a journey. And I think the first time I ever personally thought about development, what we should do, what we could do, and what government was planning was in 1992. So that was the year I joined the Hong Kong Legislative Council. And at that time, I was taken by the then Director of Lands. He took me in a helicopter and he flew me around Hong Kong. And it was really quite, if you have never done that before, it is worth you spending some money to do that. It was amazing because he of course had an intention. He wasn't just entertaining me. At the time, I was very concerned about reclamation of the harbor. And some of you might remember there were maps about the reclamation of the harbor. Anyway, he wanted to tell me personally why he thought that that was the right thing to do, right? But we also flew in the new territories and so on. So that was my beginning to think about what we do with our assets. And as KK said, you can fill it all up or whatever, but that was my starting point. And I think this panel is rather special because all three of us had actually worked very closely before. And let me fast forward to the northern metropolis. With the northern metropolis, KS and I were both in government, and KK was, of course, the director of planning. And the report that you referred to, KK, was the 2030 plan, right? And again, these are all public documents, so you can go and have a look at it. And the reason I'm going back to history is simply to say, actually, we've made tremendous progress in our thinking. And I think, KK, was a bit of a struggle for you to put the 2030 plan together. It was like, tao toy, a stir fry, got to have a bit of everything. Everybody in government has to have a say and so on. And there I was, undersecretary, looking at some of it, and I thought, a bit like a stir fry, The issue is where's the coherence and so on. But anyway, I do realize why it was a challenging exercise. That as we proceeded along, we were going to have Hong Kong's first BSAP, right? And in the middle, we did talk about reclamation, we did talk about what you shouldn't do and so on. So I think where we are today is we have actually started a new language, and this new language about capacity building, we're both looking at what natural assets you have, what you do with it, and what you don't do with it. The understanding of the capacity of nature itself. And with all of you very interested in nature-based solution, we're talking about how do you value nature. I mean, all these ideas are relatively new, relatively undeveloped, not only in Hong Kong, but in many other parts of the world too. So Hong Kong is, in a way, we've been thrust to the forefront with the Northern Metropolis project. And the Northern Metropolis project is quite special because, of course, we want to be more integrated with the Greater Bay Area. Then, of course, Shenzhen becomes important. What we do at the border, how we relate to our neighbor. And then we, of course, know we have valuable assets, Maipo, and then there is Fuk Tin on the other side. What I'm saying is we're beginning to realize that these really are truly priceless assets, but we actually don't know how to price them. So I think I'll stop by just making one more, back to Civic Exchange. Civic Exchange is the first organization that started looking at valuing nature in Hong Kong. Going back many years, there's a paper there, which maybe you still want to dig it up and ask. What was very depressing was we tried to look at how do you value Hong Kong's nature. But if you really put it in financial terms, and financial, I mean financialization terms, right? Because everybody puts things in money terms. But it was clearly wrong. Because if you look at how things are valued based on the kind of valuation we do for material things, nature is too cheap. A few tens of billions of dollars, right? Really? You know in your heart that's not true, right? So, but we still don't know how to value nature, right? So what are we now thinking to do? And I think the valuing of the wetlands, the valuing of the shrimp pond and the fish pond, right? The fact that there is the threat of extreme weather, much more extreme than we have today, because of climate change. How to make sure that the Northern Metropolis will remain serving the valuable function of preventing flooding, right? What's that worth? Is something that we are now forced to think that way. And I think we'll be greatly educated. So let's, try and do the right thing.
Okay, I think they cover most, right? Just to add one more point is about the besides flooding. I think due to the global climate change and also the location of the Northern Metropolis, the areas or the future urban areas in the NM will be the hottest areas in Hong Kong, right? Today, the NM areas are recording the hottest days or hours during our extreme hot days. And with urbanization within the NM, those areas are going to be even hotter if we cannot plan and design suitably. So probably MBS could help, could be a good infrastructure that can help to make the NM area cooler during our more extremely hot summer coming. I end here. Okay.
And anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. Well, first of all, I just realized again how privileged I am to, sorry, I guess you guys can hear me, right?
It's used in the video.
I just feel extremely privileged to sit with these distinguished panelists who are basically the builders of, Hong Kong's sustainable future. So I've learned a lot from all of you just now. And if I dare to kind of boil down the messaging I hear from you when we talk about the largest or biggest opportunities for MBS in the Northern Metropolis, is one, we are still blessed with valuable environmental capacity, that's your word, or natural assets, as Christine pointed out, in the Northern Metropolis. Large coastal wetlands, fish ponds, hillside forests, country parks, we still have them. So there's still time for us to preserve them. And there are a lot of opportunities for blue and green infrastructure and green urban greening features to incorporate in the Northern Metropolis development process. So back to what we highlighted in the report, the multi-level landscape network approach, which is a mouthful but very accurate, is that we have to prioritize the preservation and restoration of the ecosystems, which are relatively large scale, relatively intact, and then we need to optimize the blue and green infrastructures and incorporate at the same time the urban greening features whenever applicable. So, and if we flip this, what I see as the biggest opportunity for MBS is the 2.5 million people that are expected to move into this region, right? Because when we talk about MBS, the definition is to manage and protect nature for the benefit of people and their safety, their prosperity in the near future is where MBS has the biggest opportunity.
So just now, I heard some policy terms from you guys. You guys mentioned Hong Kong 2050 plus, and then Christine mentioned BSEP. So since you guys are all policy experts, I would like to ask, how can we, through policy, how can we integrate nature-based solutions in the planning, in the building of the city in the future? So maybe KK can.
Okay. Well, actually, we need to realize that when we're talking about city, the urbanized environment, this is a very, very complicated system. So when we talk about, when the critics talk about the plan of Hong Kong is fragmented, actually I do not agree with that. If it is so fragmented, then we would not come up with such a, in my opinion, so well planned and developed urban area that you or all of us consider it's quite efficient, quite livable, right? Reasonably, we are reasonably well, quite well off in this urbanized environment. So that's why I say, I would prefer, to mean this as a system, not only individual solutions. We need to look for a system. And on the other hand, when we look at the development of the Northern Metropolis, yes, as K.S. rightly pointed out, the Northern Metropolis area will be the hottest area in Hong Kong. Why? Two reasons. Geographically, it is the most continental part of Hong Kong, right? We are just by the sea. Therefore, we can enjoy very good sea breeze, land breeze in the morning, in the night. But the northern metropolis is the most continental part of Hong Kong. More than that, we have a very huge urbanized landmass very close to us, which is Shenzhen. The urbanization of Shenzhen is, they start very, very close to the northern shore of Shenzhen River. While we try to set back a little bit, they really push to the edge, because from the very, very early development of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, they would like to be as close as Hong Kong as possible to enable very convenient cross-border communication and transport. So we need to handle such situations. This is a situation given to us, right? So we have to be very careful about that. And then the last part in Kitty's presentation talk about finance. Actually, one opportunity given to us with this Northern Metropolis development is that the government is committed to put a lot of public money, a lot of public funding into the development of the Northern Metropolis. And actually, if we can do it right, this so-called to develop a nature-based system or the nature-based solution, it does not, or it constitutes quite a minor part of the overall development funding, but it can be very effective if we do it rightly, to enhance not only the environmental quality, but also the comfort or the livability of the people living there. Take the Long Valley Nature Park as an example. Why we can, produce this Land Valley Nature Park? It is because we bundle the development of this nature park with the Kutong North new development area. So when we compare, the whole, budget for this Kutong North new development area with the spending really to purchase the land, and then create this nature park and the subsequent management fee for that, it is peanuts in let me put it in this sense. So knowing that the government is committing a lot of money into the development of Northern Metropolis, then it is a very, very urgent, task that we need to put this this nature-based solution or nature-based system in the right place at the very beginning. Then that can be very, very effective. When I look up to the audience, I saw Dr. Billy Howe at the back row. Actually, I learned a lot from Billy when we were in the town planning board. And actually, Billy has a lot of research talking about this. Perhaps later on we may ask Billy to share his research finding with us, perhaps in another seminar. All right, if time is not enough for this, so I think it's important to make it right. Yes, environmental impact assessment is important. It is very important, and then this environmental assessment it should not only to mitigate the environmental impact. We need to aim at creating a better environment in the whole development process. That's what I say. We can create both environmental capacity and development capacity at the same planning process if we do it rightly.
Me first, okay. So I think in simple terms, that is integration. No matter it's at the policy level or at the town planning level,
Yes.
if you can integrate tools like the NBS, I think that's one of the most effective ways to use those resources, including public money.
Maybe I'm slightly more pedantic. I'm pedantic in policy terms because I think it's really important for things to be very clearly articulated and prioritized. So I think no one disagrees here that nature-based or how you deal with the Northern Metropolis in whole and in part has to have very clear priorities that are stated. being very pedantic about the use of language because I think it reflects a mindset. I would like to see what we're doing in the Northern Metropolis to be even more clearly articulated. And none of us are in government today, so it's not enough for us to articulate it, right? We want to share this sense with the government, and I think this is why you and others have been doing so much work. Secondly is, and I see Eddie from Gammon is here. Eddie and I have been inspired actually by, I think, a previous TNC event earlier on, where you were talking earlier on about NBS. And the inspiration is make sure you ask for what you want. Because every project, every area, whether in Hong Kong or elsewhere, there is money involved, right? And as KK said, in Hong Kong, even though we are rather 手緊, right, because not so much money in government's pocket, we are still spending billions and billions relating to different areas in the Northern Metropolis. So even if you're saying I'm building something here and it isn't particularly ecological, right? It's just a budget. Eddie and I have kind of looked at some of these infrastructure projects that are built, wherever you're building infrastructure projects. Always ask, or you do the project proponent, right? And if the project proponent is the private sector or government, always ask for an NBS solution or whatever it is that you want, right? Articulate that very clearly. So at least you get your tenderers and your consultant to put that alternative there. Now, sometimes people then argue about money. If we did that, how much is it going to be? But if you're the government, you're spending billions, right? You might as well ask for those elements. Because if you don't ask for it, it isn't really going to be there. Right? So the point that I'm making is be very clear about priorities, articulated. Secondly, make sure you ask for nature-based solutions or environmental solutions. And thirdly, I think there's another freebie. Oh, by the way, asking, right, to have a solution is what I call a freebie. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you ask, people are going to think for you. So that's free. The other freebie is actually Hong Kong is a very wealthy town. The level of wealth in Hong Kong is incredibly deep. The asset owners, the people who own property in all over Hong Kong, right, including in the Northern Metropolis, including also our philanthropists and foundations and so on in Hong Kong. If you ask, and this is what I always wanted government to do, because government has a very special role. Government can convene, right? Even when I was the undersecretary, I'm relatively low down, but if I invited people to come, right, and some of you have come to meetings and we talk about it, it's a freebie, right? It's a freebie because you're talking to people. So I suspect if the government wanted people, asset owners in Hong Kong, philanthropists in Hong Kong, to do certain things, if they were very explicit to say, here's an area, here's something, I want to partner. I mean, I know government talks about PPP, but what I'm saying today is the freebie is actually to call someone out, right? To bring people with wealth together and actually cook up something that would be a great project. Government doesn't necessarily have to pay for all of it. And present company, there's a lot of expertise. So what I'm saying is these are all potential great projects that can be done in Hong Kong, riding on an existing project where government doesn't necessarily have to pay for 100% of it.
And I actually have a follow-up question for KS, because now this question is about policy, right? So KS, when you draft the last climate action plan, actually I can see that there's some blue-green infrastructure element there. So back then, NBS, this term was not there. So what inspired you to think about blue-green infrastructure back at that time?
I think the term blue-green infrastructure existed within the government for quite a while, right? By under those departments, DSD and development bureaus actually embrace it. So actually, it's before our Climate Action Plan 2050. It actually is included in our early version, the Climate Action Plan 2030 plus. So it has been something that the government has been doing. But what we did when we were in the Environment Bureau is to really further consolidate them within the Climate Action Plan policy document. And also, actually, through the first PSAP that we did for Hong Kong, is to make it one of the mainstream policy instrument, right? So I think, and we also, within the government, set up a PSAP group, head by me, attended by the relevant departments, so that we can not only use the term blue-green infrastructure, but to push the whole relevant departments within government to really mainstream those biodiversity-related issues in all the government infrastructure and building projects. That's what we did. And I think that is the correct approach.
Yeah, because we can see that CEDD, they are doing some great work. They are developing a NBS guidebook. So I think since we're already doing stuff everywhere, there should be really some high level, like a policy document, maybe upcoming climate action plan or the update of PSAP. We can like continue to consolidate all these great work together.
Just to reinforce one point is that we did not only include the term in our policy documents, but we also further brief out the government coordination structures, like the PSAP coordination system within the government, so that we can co-learn and also to push it further in our mainstreaming process.
Yes, I think, may I chip in?
Sure.
I think KS view is very, I totally agree with him. So I will advocate, please don't be too biased by these terms. I believe there's one very famous town planning academia, perhaps it may be Peter Hall, or one of his quotations that Peter Hall in
Yes,
UK. Peter Hall is my teacher. He said, even though we did not have the term sustainability, but actually when they plan those new towns in UK, they have this sustainable development in their mind. I do not agree with him. If we don't know sustainability, then perhaps the human race should be extinguished, several thousand years ago. So actually, in the practice, we have been practicing this sustainable development. We have been practicing of making use of blue and green assets and protecting them. But this term helps us better conceptualize what we have been doing. So it doesn't mean that before the birth of these terms, what we have done is all wrong. No, definitely not.
So maybe we can move on to talk about cross-border collaboration, since Christine already covered some finance and business parts, and we don't have much time left. So for cross-border collaboration, what do you think is the key ingredients to make it success for large-scale NBS implementation?
Yes, Kitty, you mentioned about the multi-layer landscape approach. I have been using another concept is that with the collaboration of Hong Kong and Shenzhen, we will be able to create a metropolitan landscape, which is unique in the world. Through the implementation of two important planning principles. One is the urban-rural integration, and the other is coexistence of development and conservation. So with that, as Kitty said it earlier, I put a challenge to my students in Hong Kong U, as well as to the whole community. Can we make the Shenzhen Bay, the golden inner bay of the Greater Bay Area. What does it mean? It means that can we make Shenzhen Bay socio-economically as vibrant as our Victoria Harbour, but it can still keep and even enhance its ecological value? Can we have this socio-economic development at the same time, but we conserve all the, the natural coastline, the mangrove, the wetland, the landscape created by fish point? Can we do it? Can we achieve this? If we can achieve this, then we really need a nature-based system mindset. We need that. We need to go for socio-economic development. We need to create jobs there. We need to create housing. We need to, create hospitals, schools, all these services. But at the same time, can we, keep this Shenzhen Bay area, economically very vibrant and maintain and even enhance its ecological value? I believe we can do it. If we are more conscious with this direction, and that can be a model for the Greater Bay Area region.
So regarding this like a cross-border collaboration, as I mentioned in China's NBCEP, it said that Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, it should be a key strategic area. So as Christine, you are leading the Hong Kong Biodiversity Expert Group, and also AFCD is doing a BSEP consultation. What do you think regarding this key strategic area? What can Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Greater Bay Area do to make this cross-border collaboration work?
Well, maybe I try and pick up a new point. In some ways, I think if we go up to Shenzhen and have a look at what they've done there, they've done quite a nice job.
Yes.
Secondly is, I think for us, long term, to develop nature-based systems and solutions, we need young people to be willing to study biology, ecology. I'm not sure today we are able to pump out, to be honest, enough students who want to go and study this.
Ask Billy.
Yes. I think Billy would like to duplicate a few of himself, right? So we have more people being able to deal with nature and trees and so on. So it's still a reflection on our society. I mean, actually across the border, the universities there have many more students studying these various subjects than we do in Hong Kong. So again, as a matter of focusing on what we need to do, I think it's also important to, for job creation and so on, to see how public and private sector and the universities can really encourage young people to go into these sectors. But to go into these sectors, we really have to convince them that there are jobs afterwards, right? So that's why I'm also concerned that as we speak to the community, really how we can, I think young people are interested in these things, but we have yet to mainstream it to them that they can actually study these. So is it a good idea for foundations and maybe the Jockey Club? I mean, if you think this is the future and you want young people to dedicate themselves to it, do we create more scholarships? Do we explicitly do something so that young people get the message that there are jobs in the future? I'd like to see us do more in that area.
Grace, your answer really connect us to the final question because we have 5 minutes left. So the final question is, as my presentation mentioned in the almost last slide, a whole of society approach. So what do you guys think that how would this whole of society approach works? And then what everybody, like different stakeholders, what are their roles? So you guys can. Lulu?
All right. So I'm kind of representing the civics society here. I would say NGOs along with the academic partners. We're good at convening stakeholders, especially good at including the local communities, vulnerable communities in the backdrop of climate change, and make sure their rights are exercised and their voice are heard. So we would be happy to continue to play this convener role. Another point is TNC or NGOs like TNC kind of science-based organization, and we're good at deploying applied science on the ground, so that we can have MBS as proof of concept on the ground, and then later on leverage other partners to bring the work to scale.
Actually, I'm quite optimistic with that. Perhaps I share with you my observation in a planning award competition. All right, the Hong Kong Institute of Planners in the last several years hosted what we call the Greater Bay Area Planning Awards. It was joined by all the cities in the Greater Bay Area. So we organized two sections, 2022 and 2024. We're going to organize the third section next year. Fortunately, I was invited as the judge, and therefore I have the privilege to read through more than 300 entries to this award. And I found that large number of these entries are actually talking about ecology restoration, revitalization of the rundown villages, revitalize the decayed urban area with culture and preserved and restore the historic buildings. Actually, in the year 2022, the premium award, there's only one award, was given to Guangzhou. They talk about revitalize a large piece of area, maintain all the Kelau historic buildings, and put back all the intangible cultures, the Cantonese opera, all this and that. And last year, 2024, the premium award was given to Hong Kong, our East Coast Boardwalk, or because the judges realized that is a very, very important missing link in our overall, harborside promenade system, and that is perhaps one of the most challenged piece. And when this is built, then that signifies almost the completion of our harbourfront promenade, and that gave a very good, demonstrating effect to the other Greater Bay Area cities, and there are many awards, many entries. They gave awards. They're talking about ecology restoration. For example, there's a very impressive entry. They survey all the islands within the Pearl River, and there are more than 1,000 islands, small and big, within the Guangzhou district along the Pearl River Delta. They use of GIS to make the survey, and then they at the end they recommend which islands should be preserved, which islands should be restored. Even though there may be some human settlement, they better be relocated away from the island, so that all these islands can be preserved for leisure. And there's one very interesting entry. They call it airport for flying birds. they preserve a very elongated island and resettle all the human activities and keep it. They said this is an airport for flying birds. They fly there and settle there, and then they upkeep the ecology and because they believe that keeping all these islands would be very, very important to maintain the water quality, the whole ecosystem, of the Pearl River area. So these are some of the examples. So I think that reflect that if you take the Greater Bay Area as a whole, the urban planners in the Greater Bay Area cities, they have a deep reflection of what happened in the last 40 years at the very high speed of urbanization and industrialization. They damage a lot, and then they need to restore it. Not only restore it, they want to make sure that it should be of a even higher quality than 40 years ago. So I think that has become a very major way of thinking, and we talk about the mainstreaming of this NBS, and I think that is very encouraging examples. You may go to the HKIP website and look for those awarded entries, and then you can click into it, and then you'll find a lot of these restoration projects. So they're talking about, again, the approach of enabling development and nature to coexist harmoniously.
Maybe a few ideas. Before I came today, I was at a lunch with Eddie Yu, who's the head of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. He talked about how he thought the Hong Kong economy was doing, about finance. He talked about why we shouldn't think Hong Kong is dead, lots of business coming, very compelling. So lots of jobs, business coming back. I'd love to hear something like that from someone authoritative in government to talk about nature. So the same kind of inspirational talk, which I think one can write, yes, legitimately. Now, I think all of us has been to talks by HKIE on, engineers, because indeed, engineers have always been a very large section of the universities, and we have many, many projects. So just imagine if we were mainstreaming this, right? You have a high-level person actually coming out and saying, lots of jobs coming, we need biologists, we need ecologists, we need people studying sustainability and all of that, right? The hard science part as well, because we need the hard data, right, to go forward. So by spelling out that in the northern metropolis and other areas, even the coastal areas in Hong Kong, preserving this and that, reforestation, we're going to do it in a much bigger way, right? That we actually tell people that this is a growth area. So that's number one. Second idea is, I know there are some foundations here. I do not think in Hong Kong yet we have a chair of some nature-based kind of study. And it's not very expensive. If you understand how university works, right? Having a chair professorship actually forces the university to develop all kinds of activities and courses and so on. And to be honest, if you are a foundation and you can, spend relatively little money to actually generate a lot of activity in a university, it's really money well spent. But having talked to a lot of philanthropists, they may not understand that that's a really good way to spend money, particularly on the younger generation.
Okay, two more points to add. One is at the high level, the other is at the bottom-up level. I think that, as mentioned by Kitty somewhere, that the government is updating the climate action plan and the BSAP, the biodiversity strategy action plans. So with your support, I think that probably would be able to strengthen the NBS status in those high-level policy documents, and that can further help to push all to participate. And take an example that at NGO, small NGO, Wujiqiao, chaired by me currently, that we are trying to integrate NBS in our projects. The CEO of Wujiqiao just WhatsApp me that they are now working in a remote village in the northwestern part of mainland. They're trying to do kind of simple countryside infrastructure based on NBS together with students from Hong Kong U, spending the summertime to do that NBS projects in the countryside. And actually, we are trying to learn and work with other NGOs like Kaduri Farm that we can work together. I think we can integrate NBS even from bottom up together with young people. Thank you, Kitty.
Great. I feel very positive after this panel discussion. So now I may ask if there's any question from the floor. Don't be shy.
Billy. Yeah, Billy.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled that my name's mentioned many times. A question for North Metropolis. I think because of the sentient development, I think the whole society needs to do some fixing. I mean, the taking away 100 hectares of fish ponds disappoints many conservationists. And they were quiet because it's not a time that people can voice out, so you don't actually hear much noise from the society on this. But among conservationists, this is actually a very disappointing move. So to move ahead, to talk about all the sustainability initiative for Northern Metropolis, we need to fix this scar in a way. I have no solution. I just see these or voice out for my friends who are actually disappointed with this. It's not a question, sorry.
Any feedback from our guests?
It's not a question.
It's not. So any other question?
Thank you for the very inspiring sessions. I have a question. It's about consciousness. So because we was talking about Hong Kong, we have a lot of bankers, we have a lot of architects, but what if we want to have more biologists and ecologists? So my question is, do you believe that plants and animals, they have consciousness as well? I mean, like in terms of human, we need jobs creations for survival. But then if nature, which takes a huge part like plants and animals, if they have that consciousness, so I think that's a good storyline for us to build North Metropolis as a life science hub, talent hub, capital hub, fabulous hub for that. Why? Because as far as I know, there's a two animal species, they don't have cancers. One is goose, the other one is whales. So if we are going to like to understand more like this kind of two animal species to get their DNA and then to help human cure our cancers, I think that's a cool way for more young people to understand more about whales and also geese. So my question is, do you believe that not just humans have that consciousness, but also plants and animals, they have that collective consciousness? I'm sorry, it's a difficult question, but it just come out of my mind. Thank you.
I have to be the pseudoscientist on this panel now. I think science has proven that many animal species do have consciousness. They can recognize themselves in the mirror, they communicate or not. But I think if we should use that as a draw to get people to care more about nature-based solutions, not necessarily. I think that's a bigger, higher level, philosophical level of question. Like, do all the creatures on this planet have some equal right of living? And us, as the Homo sapiens sapiens on the top of the pyramid, do we recognize and respect that? But of course, my answer would be very biased. I work in conservation, but like many of us here also, we respect life. We respect what nature has provided us. We're essentially part of nature. I think these two questions are related, but not necessarily the same.
I don't have an answer for that. Any questions? Yes.
Hello, everyone. Andy Cornish. I can just about see some of you. Really enjoyed this discussion earlier. So a question sprung to my mind. So Kitty was asking about sort of how to ground MBS in policy. Thinking about, sort of from a broader perspective, we're talking about climate adaptation here, and NBS is really sort of spearheading some of the initial conversations about how our city thinks about climate adaptation. Now, the Climate Action Plan 2030 is mostly climate mitigation. There's a little bit about adaptation with the blue-green infrastructure that was mentioned before. But I would be interested to get the panel's discussion sort of on, a sort of climate adaptation plan for Hong Kong, and whether sort of policy-wise that might best fit within the Climate Action Plan, when that's updated, or does that sort of belong in the BSAT, or does that belong somewhere else? Thank you.
My views and yours might be slightly different.
Always. Okay, actually, in our both versions of Climate Action Plan, 2030 Plus and 2050, we cover three aspects: adaptation, resilience, and mitigation. It's always our backbone. That when we initiate what should be the backbone for climate actions for Hong Kong, we intentionally have the ARM. Okay, that is about, say, how to have the, say, urban greening to cool the city. That could be a kind of infrastructure hardware. Resilience could be, say, the Hong Kong Observatory these days are updating their reporting system. Like the extreme hot days is a kind of management system that can inform people how to take measures and management of their works and lifestyles, so that we can save life and keep people healthy. Mitigation is about decarbonization. And behind this, actually, we set up a system within the government, headed by, I think, the head of CEPB, and together with all the relevant departments working on infrastructure and buildings. So they carry out review and studies on climate adaptation measures in Hong Kong. We may not be able to understand all challenges, so we fund them with studies, say on extreme heat. Okay, how would that affect the infrastructure, expansion joints, etc.? That they did carry out studies and then have solutions and then integrate those recommendations in their infrastructures, including updating the standards. So the process was that we identified different extreme weathers that we need adaptation measures update. Then they carry out a process and update their relevant policies and practices. So I think we do have a system within the government, certainly, given the extreme weathers are becoming more extreme, that we should carry on these studies so that we can always update our standards and measures. Christine.
Again, I'm always very pedantic. And being pedantic about this, I will go back to the time when we were in 2012. It very clearly made in policy documents that climate change policy, including adaptation, right? Climate change policy rested with E&B. However, different departments have to help with implementation, right? So for example, when you're talking about adaptation, clearly that falls within Development Bureau and departments, yes? Today, I think this division of work is no longer so clear, because I've asked, yes? So again, being very pedantic on policy terms, I think it's important for government to very clearly articulate where climate policy lies. It's okay to have implementation division, but in terms of policy, it should rest somewhere, yeah? And it can rest with Development Bureau, by the way. I don't have a problem with that, but it's not clearly articulated. So therefore, I think it inspires questions like that. Where does it really sit? Can be corrected easily, but it will require some high-level discussion, right, within government, which they may or may not have, or they may or may not feel they need to have.
So time is up already, but maybe we can take one last question. Andy?
Actually, I want to echo several points from the panelists. KK raised a very good point. It's not about the terms NBS. Basically, recently, I worked with Christine, I'm so delighted. We identified quite a lot of solutions we have been implementing. But at that time, we don't call it a nation-based solution. So they all come up with very smart solutions, in particular in those government projects. So it not depends on the terms. Basically, if you always demand and ask for solution, the contractor, the designer always come up with some smarter solution that can solve the problem. That I really concur with KK points. And about the green-blue infrastructure, I see one things that you mainstream it is, I see what they call the Development Bureau, they issue a technical circulars on green-blue infrastructure. Because when you can mainstream it, that means the Development Bureau, the executor, they turn these things, policy stuff, into a document that guide all the works department to implement their policy. So this is how I see you guys mainstream your policy, because you can engage the executor, like the Development Bureau or other bureau, to implement it. That's what I really want to see. And that's what Christine raised another question, is right now, I'm not that optimistic about like the BSAT. It seems that if you just rely on AFCD to mainstream it, it's not possible to mainstream it. You have to escalate to the bureau level and engage other bureau, in particular those departments, the works department, under the Development Bureau, the Transport Logistics Bureau, Housing Bureau, to implement those recommended in the BSAT. I think that what I can help is to write during this consultation and write to and raise out this point and gather more view to encourage AFCD to work with EEB and other bureaus to work on that. So that's what I just want to make the comment. And the final bit, Christine Parr, she gave me lots of encouragement that financing is really difficult in this round. For government, recently, I can look at the tender. They require us to design and build a wetland or a shelter for pinfall. So we can cost it in that tender, but we never measure the service of that solution because it's a public asset. So it serves the public, that's priceless. We don't need to put a money tag on it. But the service part is something that the financial sector can really take a look, because we have no taxonomy on it. Yeah, we can just base on some base scheme driven by the NBS guideline or the EIA study. That's a baseline. What we can do better is something that the financial sector would be looking for. And then that is something that we can all share about the financing. Yeah.
Can I just say something here? I actually think Hong Kong do a lot more than we think Hong Kong is. And it's kind of a combination of what everybody has said, including Eddie. And you don't know this probably until you've been in government. So there's lots of these guidelines, right, that different departments issue. And it's very significant when they issue these practice guidelines, because it means that all those projects out there have to follow the guidelines. So it's actually quite powerful. However, the spirit, I'm pedantic because I know the spirit behind those guidelines are never clearly articulated as policy, right? So what I'm saying is, you're leaving a lot of loose change on the table because senior level people don't articulate it in a way. They see it as a lower level stuff, in fact, because it's just the practice guidelines, right? That we're not able to take what government is doing to tell our own people and we cannot generate the kind of excitement, right, in our own people, nor can we stand up internationally sometimes to say, no, this is my policy, because it's in the practice guidelines, right? So my frustration, to be honest, is I see a lot of good stuff on the table, right? A lot of good stuff, a lot of good people, a lot of great professionals. But we fail very often to be able to articulate it in a way that generates the kind of excitement. And I think, Eddie, you've been in this professional business for so long, right, that you actually see all of this. But when you provide an example like the bats, right, you understand it instinctively. But we don't actually realize that we're not costing those things. So how should we deal with it? This is the thing. If we can deal with it in government and it's acknowledged, somehow we may be able to get the money, or you get something done, right? So I see that there's a lot of benefit in speaking across departments and bureaus to see just how we can connect some of these things much better. These are freebies because they're already done.
Great.
I just want to make a final comment to echo Billy, although he's gone. For example, the reasons I talk about, I just received a tender requiring us to design the wetland and bat shelter. About the wetland is to design a wetland for compensation. But what I really want to see is to design something to protect and conserve the wetland, instead of destroy it and compensate somewhere. I think this is what Billy is talking about.
Yes.
Thank you so much for our star level panelists today, and we can continue the discussion after this meeting, and then hopefully we can kickstart some NBS task force and articulate it further and make real change and make Hong Kong a world role model, not just regional. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, Kitty, and all the panelists. I appreciate everyone's insightful questions and vibrant participations. I hope today's event underscored the urgent needs that we've been talking about and an incredible opportunity to integrate the MBS into the heart of Hong Kong urban nature, and particularly in the Northern Metropolis. On behalf of the Nature Conservancy and Civic Exchange, thank you for being here. So let's keep the conversation going and the momentum building. Have a wonderful rest of your day.